in regards to digital citizenship, particularly copyright and plagiarism. The assignments for this week in ELA are going to be focused on these particular topics. And there's something that Ms. Cook, Ms. Ellis, and I are finding in some of your written responses to our questions, where some of you are copying word for word, or you're going to another source, such as the internet, and just either Googling the questions that we are asking, or just searching other sites. And so we wanted to talk to you about the things or the expectations that we have in regards to how you are going to complete assignments. And so I'm just going to go ahead and get started with some tips. The first one is that we are providing you resources to use. For example, there are passages that will provide you that we want you to read. You need to read those. The questions that we always ask that go along with these particular passages or resources are going to be found in those particular resources that we share with you. So there's no need for you to go to Google or the internet to do that. So use those resources provided to you by us. We'll let you know when we're wanting you to research outside of what we're providing you. Ultimately, we are just trying to make sure that we protect you in regards to some of the things that you may find online. Things that you find online are not always accurate and true. The next thing is when you are answering questions in sentences or paragraphs or writing a couple of paragraphs with a writing prompt, you need to make sure that you are putting things in your own words. We can tell when there are things that you haven't written because it doesn't necessarily sound like a fourth grader has written it. Just a rule of thumb is if you are going to type something and we would ask you, well, what does this mean? And you can't tell us, that's usually a flag for us to that you may have copied that from somewhere else. So you need to make sure that you always put it in your own words. There are times where, like I may provide an assignment and I want you to look at a passage and I want you to go and find the answer directly in the passage. And it's okay for certain circumstances to do that, where you're going to pull it directly from the passage. But when you're writing like a paragraph or a paper that's kind of like a report or a summary, those things need to be written in your own words because usually they are in response to a passage or an article or even a video that we have given you. The next thing is, do not complete a Google search unless you are told to do so by your teacher. Again, as I had mentioned earlier, we're trying to protect you. We're trying to also teach you that there are some things on the internet that are not what are considered credible resources or credible sources. And so you want to make sure that you are not doing that unless you have been told by your teacher. And even whenever you are performing a Google search, you need to make sure that you have adult supervision to do so, because there are things that will pop up and they're going to give you false information. And it's going to make you look like you have no clue what you're talking about. So again, do not do a Google search for any of the questions we ask. We will provide you with the things that you need in order to get the information in regards to questions that we will ask about certain topics. All right, you also want to be careful of what sources you do use. So if we were, for example, doing a research project or a research paper where I wanted you to look up something, typically whenever I'm going to have you look up something, I will direct you to what website I want you to look at. And the reason I do that is because I know that it's got valid information. And it's also kid appropriate. It's kind of on your level, because there's some things that when you go and look at, you type in a topic and you look, it will put it in adult language and it makes no sense whatsoever. So we will a lot of times direct you to websites that we want you to go to when you're doing research. But there are some sources that are just not credible. For example, Wikipedia. It is not a credible source to use at all because anybody can add to it, and a lot of schools frown down upon using that as a reliable resource for any information that you gain. So anytime you are told to go to a different source than what if we don't provide you with a reading passage or an article, we will typically provide you with the websites that we want you to go to. So they must be teacher approved when you do use outside sources for getting or gaining information, and it's just a good habit to form because that's what's going to happen as you continue on with elementary school and even go into middle school, high school, and college. There's just some things that teachers and professors they will not. They frown down upon, and they will give a bad grade just for using that particular source. And then finally, plagiarism, which is copying someone else's ideas that are written in expression or expressed in some sort of form. When you plagiarize or copy someone else's work, we know. And there are so many tools that teachers have that allow us to check written responses versus what is out there on the internet. So just be aware that teachers have tools to see when you are plagiarizing something. So if you do plagiarize something, moving forward, it can result in you having to redo an assignment, or you get a 0 for your grade. And we don't want that for you guys. As you get older and you continue on through your school career, you could fail a class. I know in college, if you're caught plagiarizing anything, you can actually fail the course and get kicked out and lose your money for that. So we want you to be careful with those things and develop those good habits now, so that it will prevent you from doing those things later on. And I will tell you this: a lot of times plagiarism, even if you don't mean to do it, like it's unintentional or accidental, or you don't realize that you're doing it, you could still get in trouble for that later on in your school career. So you want to be careful with that. I know, like in 4th grade, we have a little bit more leniency with those things. We're here to help you and to train you. And when you're ever in doubt, just ask. We have no problems helping you with things. Any of your teachers throughout your school career have no problems helping you with those things. And just a rule of thumb, and I even tell this to my daughters, and I even do it whenever I've written papers. If I'm not sure whether or not this was something that I got from another source, because sometimes when you're in the middle of reading a lot of information from so many different things, it could sometimes be confusing as to what is your actual thoughts versus what you read somewhere and then gained or took from it. So I always just say a good rule of thumb to students, to myself, to coworkers, is just to give it credit. Even if you're not sure, just give it credit. You never can have too many citations. And you'll see some of the videos and assignments this week. It will talk about citations. We don't do it quite as often in 4th grade, but we will do it some. So I just want you to be careful. Have good digital citizenship. I know a lot of times digital citizenship pertains more to like just making sure that you're online in an appropriate way. And that includes making sure that you are mindful of copyright laws, that you are not plagiarizing or copying from somebody else's, because essentially it is considered stealing. So just wanted to give you those few tips, and just to let you know, to be mindful of that. We're aware of when you have copied something versus putting it in your own words, especially when you are writing information about something that's not included in what we're telling you to look at, like the passages or the articles or the Google slides that we may have that might have some paragraphs on it. You need to use those. If we're asking questions or asking you to read something, you need to make sure that you look back at those particular passages or those particular Google slides or videos that we have given to you to answer those questions, because we're not going to ask you a question if it's not related to what we've given you as a resource. And again, if you ever have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We just want you to be safe, and we just want you to have good digital citizenship and to perform good habits now, so that as you continue on in your school career, you're going to be very successful.